Bernard Tobin here at the Certified Crop Advisors annual meeting in London, and today we're going to talk about sweet potatoes. And to do that, I'm joined by Valerio Primomo. Thanks for stopping by.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
Now, you are a research scientist, vegetable breeder, based at the Vineland Research Station, and you've been working on this crop now for about 9 years. Give us a snapshot of the industry in Canada, and I know it's primarily Ontario-based.
As you mentioned, it's primarily grown in Ontario, but in the past few years, we've seen production increase, or at least the willingness to try out this crop across Canada in more northern climates where production season is very short. And sweet potato is a heat-loving crop, so it needs a lot of heat. So those areas might be challenged in producing sweet potatoes. However, if you use the right variety, that is a short season, early maturing variety, then other regions in Canada can produce this crop.
Talk about, I guess, the difference between a sweet potato and a yam. I like both, but very different crops.
Yes, so a sweet potato is very moist. Obviously, it's sweeter. It has a very soft skin, and it's part of the morning glory family. And it's primarily produced in the U.S., China, and Canada. Whereas the yam is very starchy, has a very rough skin, a very scaly skin, very firm. And it's primarily produced in the Caribbean, and it's part of the lily family.
Let's talk about growing sweet potatoes in Canada. Now, you talked about today that the three primary varieties that have been grown, not adapted necessarily to Ontario and the shorter climate, but you've been working hard to develop a new variety. Talk about what growers have been growing and what they may grow in the future.
The three main varieties, the early producers of sweet potatoes back 20 years ago, 30 years ago, were growing Beauregard. That's the predominant one, not only in Canada, but the U.S. But in the past 10, 15 years, two new varieties have come on the market. One being Covington, which is a predominant one also in the U.S., and Orleans. These are the two main varieties grown in Ontario.
Now, you've been also working hard on a new variety called Radiance.
Yes, so this variety is more adapted to not only Ontario, but more northern Canadian climates, which have even shorter growing seasons. This variety has been shown to be earlier maturing than Covington and Orleans by, I would say, between 10 and 20 days earlier. And it has higher yields, and it tastes great.
Now, the big rush here is to get to market, obviously, and Thanksgiving is a big market for Canadian growers, and we've got 2,300 acres in Canada, and a big push is to get to market by Thanksgiving, and Radiance will give growers a better shot at that, right?
Since this variety is earlier maturing, it gives them the opportunity to hit that market, whereas Covington we know is a very late variety, and growers that have been growing it for many years have never been able to hit that market.
Talk about the cost of production, the net return on a crop like this. This is a high value crop.
Yes, it is. It's a high value. Just looking at our numbers, of course, it's going to vary from grower to grower and your production practices. But based on our own numbers and research, if you're growing Covington, on average, your revenue is about, I'd say, $10,000. Your cost of production is probably around $6,000-7,000, and your return is about $3,000 to $4,000. Now, if you want to switch over to Radiance, which tends to have higher yields, if you can hit the Thanksgiving market and get greater returns on that, then your profit can be maybe $1,000, $2,000 more per acre.
Well, those are nice numbers, and I guess the next challenge is the future of the industry, and that is getting growers an opportunity to grow Radiance. You mentioned in your presentation the need for to create and build a Canadian slip industry, and basically that is the cuttings that you need to grow the crop.
Right. So current varieties are being imported from the U.S., from North Carolina. That's where all slip production is done. There is no, as you mentioned, there is no slip production industry in Canada. And since we have this new variety, we need to bulk it up. So we would like at least some propagators that do have greenhouses that are sitting empty from the March to June timeframe to at least try it out and help to provide the industry with radiance.
You mentioned obviously slips are grown in the southern U.S. Obviously infield going to have to be grown in the greenhouse here in the north, but it's going to cost more, but it can be effective.
Exactly, it's going to cost more just because you're doing it indoors in a greenhouse. Our research was all based on greenhouse. However, it's most likely you can also do it in a hoop house, which is much cheaper to purchase and maintain. But there are ways to cutting down the cost of production even further by using current technology such as automation, which we know that the U.S. industry does not use, but might be suitable in the greenhouse industry up here. We've looked at cheaper growing media, such as grow bark, might reduce the cost by half. So there are options, we just haven't gotten there yet.
A question about the future here. I mean, you've got an order for about 1 million slips of radiance for the next year. A good foundation to build on. What might be the potential? I mean, obviously you need that industry, that slip industry to develop, but what might be the potential for sweet potatoes with your new variety?
So looking at the demand in the past few years and how I project in the next 3 to 4 years, if we get 25% of the market, which will put it at about 400 or 500 acres in Canada. So that's what I think that's what I'm targeting. I think we can achieve that, but we need the slip production industry to help with that, improve that, increase that.
Well, hey, a great story. Thanks for sharing it. We'll be watching.
All right, thank you.